I lost my job because a bus skidded off an icy bridge and someone died. By morning, my badge no longer opened the door, and my name was already on the news. My sister texted me 3 words: "Please stop digging." At dinner that night, her fiancé smiled across the table and poured me a glass of water like nothing had happened. I noticed a thin line of road salt still stuck to the cuff of his expensive coat. I thanked him calmly, already knowing everything I trusted was about to collapse. The night the bus went over the edge, the snow was coming down sideways, the kind that feels like needles on your face. I stood under the orange glare of a streetlight at the foot of the bridge, boots already soaked, clipboard tucked under my arm out of habit even though nobody had asked me to be there. The metal guardrail was twisted open like a peeled can. Far below, red and blue lights blinked against the dark river. I had spent 10 years inspecting roads like this one. 10 years measuring slopes, checking drainage, running friction tests, writing reports that most people only read when something went wrong. I knew the sound of a healthy surface under tires. I knew the smell of fresh asphalt. And I knew, standing there in the cold, that this bridge should not have failed the way it did. A police officer waved me back. "Ma'am, you need to clear the area." "I work for the city," I said automatically, reaching for my badge. He glanced at it, then shook his head. "Not tonight." I took a step back, watching as paramedics loaded a body bag into the ambulance. "Just one," they said. The driver survived. One person in the back seat had not. A late-shift nurse, according to the radio chatter. 32 years old, same age as my sister. By the time I got home, my phone was vibrating non-stop. Messages from coworkers, a missed call from my supervisor, 3 voicemails from unknown numbers. I dropped my keys into the bowl by the door and listened to the last one. "Harper Lane, this is Human Resources. Do not report to work tomorrow. Your access is suspended pending an internal review." Internal review. The words felt heavy in my ear, like they were already written into my file somewhere. I slept badly, drifting in and out, the image of the twisted guardrail replaying behind my eyes. When I woke up, the first thing I did was check the city incident dashboard on my laptop. The page would not load. I tried my email. Access denied. I tried the project management system. Access denied. Then I opened the news. My face was not there, but my name was. City engineer under review after deadly bridge crash. Questions raised about oversight in Minneapolis Road Safety Department. Internal emails suggest lapses in inspection protocols. Internal emails. That meant they were already framing a story. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. "Please stop digging." No hello, no question, just those 3 words. I stared at the screen for a long moment. My sister, Sienna, was the one who had always told me to speak up, to push harder, to never let anyone quiet me. She was older by 4 years, louder by 10, the kind of person who took over a room without trying. Seeing her tell me to stop felt like stepping into the wrong house by accident. I typed back, "Digging into what?" She did not reply. By noon, I could not sit still. I pulled on my coat and drove downtown anyway. Old habit. Maybe I thought if I stood in the building long enough, someone would remember I belonged there. The security desk looked the same. Same chipped mug next to the monitor. Same plant drooping in the corner. But the guard behind the desk was new. "Can I help you?" he asked. "I'm here to see my supervisor." He typed my name into his system, paused, then tilted the screen slightly away from me. "You're not cleared for entry." End quote. "Since when?" "Since this morning." I stepped aside, pretending to scroll through my phone, and watched 2 of my former coworkers walk past the desk without looking at me. They did not slow down. They did not wave. It felt like I had already become a rumor. I left before the guard could see my hands shaking. That evening, I drove out to my mother's house for dinner. Wednesday night dinners had been a Lane family tradition for as long as I could remember. Pot roast if Mom had the energy. Takeout if she did not. Laughter. Complaints about work. Wedding planning chatter lately. Sienna opened the door before I could knock. She looked perfect, as always. Hair in loose waves, soft sweater, bare feet on the hardwood. "You look tired," she said. "So do you." She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Long day. The dining table was already set. Candles lit. Plates warmed. Grant stood near the counter, sleeves rolled up, cutting lemons with a knife that looked more expensive than my monthly grocery budget. "Harper," he said warmly, "I was hoping you would come." Grant Mercer had a way of sounding sincere without ever sounding emotional. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face people trusted quickly. He owned a construction firm that seemed to win every city contract it touched. He also happened to be the man my sister was marrying in 3 months. "I almost didn't," I said. He tilted his head. "Rough day?" "You could say that." He slid a glass toward me across the counter. "Water. No ice, just water. Hydration helps with shock," he said lightly. "I read that somewhere." I wrapped my fingers around the glass. It was still warm, like it had been poured a while ago and left waiting. We ate. We talked about small things. The neighbor's dog, a new coffee shop opening on Hennepin. The caterer Sienna wanted to book. Nobody mentioned the bridge. Nobody mentioned the headline. Halfway through the meal, Mom excused herself to take a call in the other room. Sienna stared down at her plate, pushing carrots around with her fork. Grant watched her, then glanced at me. "You know," he said, casual as breathing, "sometimes when something goes wrong, the best thing you can do is let the process handle it." I met his eyes. "What process is that?" "The one that protects everyone from making mistakes in public." "It is Ragrive 249. I did not respond. I just nodded and took another sip of water. When we stood to clear the dishes, Grant shrugged on his coat. The cuff brushed past my hand as he reached for the door. A thin white line clung to the dark fabric, powdery, almost invisible, unless you were looking for it. Road salt. The same pale residue I had seen piled thick along the shoulder of the bridge the night before, where the runoff had pooled and refrozen into a slick sheet. The same residue that should have been cleared hours earlier by the contracted maintenance crew. Grant did not notice my eyes on his sleeve. He kissed Sienna's cheek, promised to call later, and left with a friendly wave. Sienna watched the door long after it closed. "You need to be careful," she said quietly. "About what?" "About everything." I studied her face. "Why are you really asking me to stop?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She flipped it over without looking at the screen. "I just want our family to be okay," she said finally. I nodded. "So do I." On the drive home, the city looked different. Streetlights harsher, shadows longer. Every intersection felt like a question I did not yet know how to answer. When I pulled into my apartment parking lot, something glittered on my windshield, a fine dusting of white. I turned on the overhead light and leaned closer. Salt. Not snow. Not frost. Salt, sprinkled lightly across the glass, like someone had shaken it from their hand. I sat there for a long time with the engine off, listening to the ticking sound as it cooled. My phone buzzed once more. An unknown number. "You are asking the wrong questions," the message read. I did not reply. I just stared at the words until the screen went dark. Inside, my apartment felt smaller than usual. Too quiet. I set my phone on the counter and poured myself a glass of tap water. It tasted metallic. Probably just the pipes, I told myself. Probably just my nerves. I carried the glass to the window and looked out at the lot below, at the faint white specks on the ground near my tires, at the space where a shadow might have been a person, or might have been nothing at all. By the time I turned off the light and went to bed, I had already made a decision. I did not know yet how I would prove anything. I did not know who I could trust. I did not know how deep this went, but I knew this. The bridge had not failed by accident. My name was being used as a shield, and the people I loved most were closer to the truth than they were willing to admit. Lying in the dark, I thought about the warm glass of water, the calm smile, the thin line of salt on a tailored coat. Everything I believed about my job, my family, my place in this city felt suddenly fragile, like a railing that looked solid until you leaned on it. I closed my eyes, already aware that whatever came next was going to break something. Probably more than one thing. I woke before dawn with the taste of iron still in my mouth, and the image of road salt clinging to the inside of my eyelids. For a few seconds, I did not remember why my chest felt tight. Then the words from the night before came back in order. The bridge. The headline. The text from Sienna. The warm glass of water in Grant's hand. I rolled onto my side and reached for my phone. No new messages. No apology. No explanation. Just silence. Thick and deliberate. My kitchen clock read 5:12. The city outside my window was barely moving. A plow rumbled somewhere in the distance, metal blades scraping asphalt. That sound used to calm me. It meant maintenance. It meant prevention. It meant someone was doing their job. Now it just made me feel foolish. I brewed coffee and opened my laptop. Not because I expected access to be restored, but because routine was the only thing I still trusted. Every system still showed the same error. Access denied, unauthorized, suspended. So I did the only thing left to me. I started working with what I already had. I opened a folder on my personal drive and labeled it simply Bridge. Inside, I created subfolders: weather, maintenance schedules, past inspection notes, contract records. I had copies of more than I realized. Years of habit had taught me to back up everything important. Not because I distrusted my department, but because technology failed. Servers crashed, files vanished. It was easier to be safe. That habit might save me now. I spent the morning combing through old reports. The bridge had been rated satisfactory 6 months earlier. No structural red flags, no major surface defects. The issue was never the concrete. It was the surface treatment, the friction layer that allowed tires to grip when temperatures dropped. That layer was not applied by the city. It was subcontracted. I knew the name before I even looked it up. Mercer Infrastructure Solutions, Grant's company. My phone rang just after 10. Mom's name flashed on the screen. "Are you okay?" she asked without preamble. "I do not know," I said honestly. She hesitated. "Sienna is worried about you." "Is she?" "She says you are under a lot of stress, that maybe you should let things settle." I stared at the cursor blinking on my screen. "Did she tell you to say that?" "No," Mom said quickly. "Too quickly. I am just asking as your mother." I softened my voice. "I know. I am not going to do anything reckless. I just need to understand what is happening." There was a pause on the line. "Sometimes understanding comes with a cost," she said quietly. "So does ignorance." She did not argue with that. We said goodbye soon after. By midday, I had built a timeline. When the contract was awarded, when the surface treatment was scheduled, when the weather shifted, when the accident occurred, it all looked normal on paper. Too normal. Every checkbox filled, every signature present, every deadline technically met. That kind of perfection rarely happened in real life. At 2 in the afternoon, someone knocked on my door. Not a polite knock. Not a neighbor's casual tap. This was sharp, deliberate, meant to be heard. I froze in place. The apartment suddenly felt very small. I did not move toward the door. I just waited. The knock came again, louder. "Harper Lane?" A man's voice called through the wood. "Yes," I said after a long moment. "City Legal Department. I need a word." I opened the door just enough to see him. Mid-40s, gray suit, no city badge, just a leather folder tucked under his arm. "May I come in?" he asked. "No." He studied me for a second, then nodded. "Fair enough. This will be quick. There are rumors circulating about internal documents being shared externally. If you have any city property in your possession, you are required to return it." "I do not have anything that belongs to the city," I said. His eyes flicked briefly to the side, as if checking the hallway behind me. "For your sake, I hope that is true." He handed me a card. No title. Just a name and a number. "Consider this a courtesy visit," he said. "Not everyone gets one." When he left, I locked the door and leaned my forehead against the wood. My heart was racing, but underneath the fear was something else. Clarity. If they were sending legal to my apartment, then I was closer to something than they wanted. That night, I did something I had not done in years. I drove out to the bridge alone. The snow had been cleared. The guardrail was already partially repaired. Fresh cones lined the shoulder. Everything looked neat, sanitized, like the city was eager to erase what had happened. I parked a block away and walked the rest of the distance. The air smelled faintly of chemicals, de-icer, fresh application, too fresh. I crouched near the edge and ran my glove along the pavement. The texture felt wrong, too smooth. A surface like this should have had more grit, more resistance. It was subtle. Most people would never notice, but I did. I took out my phone and snapped a photo, then another, then a short video, dragging the sole of my boot lightly across the surface to show how easily it slid. Still inspecting after hours? The voice came from behind me. I turned slowly. Grant stood a few feet away, hands in his coat pockets, breath visible in the cold. "What are you doing here?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "Same question. This is a public bridge. It is also a very sensitive site right now. People might misunderstand your presence." I straightened. "People misunderstand a lot of things lately." He studied me for a long moment, then stepped closer. Not threatening, just close enough that I could smell his cologne beneath the winter air. "You are smart," he said. "That is not a compliment, it is an observation. Smart people sometimes forget that they are also vulnerable." "What do you want, Grant?" "To offer you advice. As family." He paused. "Stop." The word hung between us. "For Sienna's sake," he added. "She has been through enough." I thought of the way she had pushed carrots around her plate, the way she had avoided my eyes, the way she had asked me, almost pleaded, to stop digging. "What has she been through?" I asked quietly. Something flickered across his face, too fast to name. Annoyance, fear, calculation. "Wedding planning is stressful," he said lightly. "You know how she gets. She worries about everyone else before herself." I did not respond. He glanced down at the pavement, then back at me. "Go home, Harper. Let the city handle its mess. You do not want to be the person standing in front of the bulldozer." He turned and walked away before I could answer. I stayed there another 10 minutes after he left, staring at the road like it might speak back to me if I waited long enough. When I finally returned to my car, there was a folded piece of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. No envelope, no name. Just one sentence, written in careful block letters. "Check the winter archive." I looked around the empty street. No movement, no witnesses, just the bridge and the soft hum of traffic in the distance. At home, I sat at my kitchen table, with the paper in front of me. The winter archive. It sounded like an internal storage label. Something old, something forgotten, something most people assumed no one would ever open again. I opened my laptop and began listing every system I knew the city had retired over the last 5 years. Every server, every database, every dusty rack in the back of the IT storage room that nobody wanted to deal with because it was easier to install something new than to maintain something old. If the answer was anywhere, it would be there. In the data, nobody thought to clean up. In the logs, nobody reviewed. In the backups, nobody remembered existed. The thought sent a strange kind of energy through me. Not hope, not yet, but direction. For the first time since the accident, I felt like I was not just reacting, I was moving. My phone buzzed again. Another text from an unknown number. "You are running out of time." I set the phone face down and stared at the wall. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was. But as I opened a new document and began mapping out every path that might lead me to that archive, one truth settled in my chest, solid and immovable. Someone was working very hard to keep me away from something, which meant that something mattered. By the third morning, the city had decided who I was. I could feel it in the way people looked at me when I stepped into a coffee shop. Not open hostility, not sympathy either, just recognition without warmth. The kind that meant they had read something about me and filed it away under problem. The barista took my order without making eye contact. The man behind me shifted his weight like he did not want to stand too close. I carried my cup to a corner table and opened my laptop, more out of habit than hope. My inbox was still locked. My work accounts were still sealed, but my personal email was alive, and with it came the noise. Messages from strangers who thought they knew me. Some angry, some smug, some pretending to be kind while asking sharp questions. You should be ashamed. People died. Engineers like you ruin cities. Hope you lose your license. I closed the tab and focused on the one thing that still made sense. Data, timelines, cause and effect. I opened the document I had started the night before and added a new section. Pressure. Because pressure was not random. Pressure was designed. Someone was building a narrative around me, one brick at a time. My phone rang just after 9. A number I did not recognize. I let it go to voicemail. The message came through seconds later. Harper, this is Denise from Human Resources. We need to schedule a formal interview regarding the incident. Your cooperation will be noted in the final report. Cooperation will be noted. Like I was already on trial. I listened again, slower this time. There was something in her tone. Not hostility, something closer to discomfort, like she was reading from a script she did not believe in. I typed out a response email, then deleted it. Typed another, deleted that too. Whatever I said would be filtered through legal, through optics, through damage control. Not truth. Instead, I opened my calendar. Wednesday, 2 p.m., HR interview, mandatory. Fine. If they wanted me present, I would be present. But I would not walk in unprepared. At noon, I drove downtown again, not to my office, but to a small municipal records building a few blocks away. It was the kind of place most people never noticed. No glossy lobby, no news cameras, just rows of filing cabinets and a staff that survived on vending machine snacks and routine. I signed in under visitor and took a seat at a public computer terminal. Contract records were not confidential. Procurement summaries were not confidential. Subcontractor disclosures were not confidential. They were just boring, which meant no one paid attention. I searched Mercer Infrastructure Solutions. The list of projects was long. Bridge resurfacing, road expansion, drainage upgrades. Dozens of contracts, all awarded within narrow bidding windows, all approved with unusual speed. I printed what I could and slid the pages into my bag one by one. An older woman behind the desk glanced over. "Research project?" she asked casually. Something like that. She nodded like she had seen 100 people like me before. Then she leaned slightly closer and lowered her voice. "Be careful," she said. I looked up. "Excuse me?" Her eyes flicked to the printer, then back to me. "People who dig too much around here tend to get headaches." End quote. She straightened before I could ask anything else and called the next number in line. I walked out of the building with the papers tucked under my arm and the strange sense that I was not as invisible as I thought. On the sidewalk, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Sienna. "Are you coming to the venue tour today?" I stared at the message. Venue tour. Cake tasting. Flower arrangements. All the normal things that were supposed to fill the weeks before a wedding. I typed back. "I did not know I was invited." "You are always invited," she wrote. Then, after a pause, "Please, just come." For me, I closed my eyes for a moment. Part of me wanted to say no, to protect myself, to keep distance between my investigation and my family. But another part of me, the part that still hoped my sister was on my side, typed one word. "Okay." The venue was a converted warehouse near the river, exposed brick, Edison bulbs, white drapery hung from iron beams. Everything looked curated to appear effortless. Sienna stood near the center of the space with a clipboard. She looked smaller than usual, like the room was swallowing her. When she saw me, relief crossed her face so quickly it hurt to witness. "You came," she said. I said I would. She smiled, then glanced behind me, as if expecting someone else. "Grant is running late." "Meeting." "Of course." We walked through the space together. She pointed out where the tables would go, where the band would set up, where she planned to stand. "It is supposed to feel warm," she said. "Not showy, just safe." Safe. The word landed between us with more weight than she seemed to realize. "Do you feel safe?" I asked gently. She hesitated. Just for a second. "Of course." But she did not meet my eyes when she said it. A woman with a measuring tape interrupted us to ask about chair spacing. Sienna turned toward her eagerly, grateful for the distraction. I wandered toward the back of the room while they talked. Near the loading door, I noticed a stack of folded tarps leaning against the wall. Black, industrial grade, the kind used on construction sites. One of them had a familiar logo printed faintly on the corner. Mercer. I reached out and lifted the edge of the top tarp. Underneath was a layer of white dust scattered across the concrete floor. Powdery. Fine. Salt. I let the tarp fall back into place and stepped away, just as Sienna's voice called my name. Harper? I turned. She was watching me now, something like fear behind her eyes. What are you doing back there? Just looking, I said. Her grip tightened on the clipboard. You do not need to look. This is just wedding stuff. I walked back toward her slowly. Why would your wedding venue need construction tarps from your fiancé's company? She swallowed. They were donated. For weather. For logistics. You are overthinking. Am I? She shook her head quickly. Please. Not here. Not now. The woman with the measuring tape pretended not to listen, but her movements slowed. I lowered my voice. I am not trying to ruin anything. I am trying to understand. Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears back. Understanding is dangerous right now. Why? She opened her mouth, then froze. Her gaze drifted past my shoulder. I did not need to turn to know who had arrived. Grant's voice filled the space. There you are. He approached with his usual calm, coat slung over one arm, confidence in every step. He kissed Sienna's cheek, then looked at me. Harper, I was hoping you would come. I am sure you were. He glanced toward the back of the room, toward the tarps, then back to my face. Everything looks good, does it not? It looks very organized, I said carefully. That is what people pay for. Order, predictability. It is the mino. He placed a hand on Sienna's back. She stiffened slightly under his touch. Have you two been catching up? He asked. A little, she said quickly. Good, he replied. Family should stay close during stressful times. I met his gaze. Especially when someone is under investigation. His smile did not falter. Especially then. The tour resumed. The tension did not. By the time I left, my shoulders ached from holding them too tight. The cold air outside felt like relief, like truth. As I reached my car, I noticed something tucked under the wiper. Not paper this time. A USB drive. Plain. Black. Unlabeled. I stood there staring at it, the city humming around me, the venue lights glowing warm behind the windows. A test. A trap. Or an opportunity. I slid it into my pocket without looking around and drove home with both hands gripping the wheel. Inside my apartment, I set the drive on the counter and stared at it for a long time before plugging it into my laptop. One folder appeared. Winter. Archive. My pulse thudded in my ears. Inside the folder were subfolders labeled by year. I clicked the most recent. Hundreds of files. Logs. Backups. System snapshots. The kind of raw data no one ever wanted to sift through unless they absolutely had to. At the top of the list was a single text file. Read this first. I opened it. You are being set up. Your credentials were used twice the night of the crash. Once from your home IP. Once from inside the city server room. You were not in both places. Someone else has admin access. Below that, a name. Nolan Pike, my former supervisor. The man who had trained me. The one who had taught me to document everything because documentation was protection. My phone buzzed in my hand. A new message from an unknown number. You have crossed the line. I closed my laptop slowly, the weight of what I had just read settling deep in my chest. The line, it seemed, had always been closer than I thought. I did not sleep that night. I closed the laptop, but the words stayed lit behind my eyes, bright and impossible to ignore. You are being set up. Someone else has admin access. Nolan Pike. I said his name out loud once, just to hear how it sounded in the room. It felt wrong. Not impossible, just wrong in the way betrayal often does. Like discovering a door you have used for years was never really locked. Nolan had been my supervisor for 3 years. He was careful, methodical, a man who labeled every cable, archived every report, and ended every meeting with the same sentence. If it is not documented, It did not happen. That was practically his religion, which meant if his credentials had touched those logs, it was either deliberate or someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to imitate him. Either option was bad. I reopened the laptop and created a new folder on my drive. I named it simply Pike. Inside, I began copying everything from the USB that referenced his login: timestamps, IP addresses, server paths. It was technical, tedious work, but it was familiar, comforting in its own way. The data did not lie. It just waited for you to understand it. The pattern became clearer as the minutes passed. 2 logins on the night of the crash. One using my credentials, originating from my apartment building. The other using Nolan's, originating from inside the city data center. The timing overlapped by 12 minutes. No one could be in 2 places at once, unless someone wanted it to look that way. At 4 in the morning, I pushed my chair back and rubbed my eyes. The city outside was silent, snow drifting lazily past the streetlights. I looked at my phone. No new threats, no new warnings. That almost felt worse. Whoever had given me the USB wanted me to find this, which meant someone inside the system was not on the same side as the people trying to scare me. The question was why. The HR interview was scheduled for 2 that afternoon. I showered, dressed carefully, and chose clothes that looked neutral, not defensive, not combative, just calm, the version of myself they would want to believe was cooperative. The city building felt colder than usual when I arrived. The same security guard from earlier in the week did not meet my eyes as I signed in. A woman from HR led me down a hallway to a small conference room with frosted glass walls. Denise was already there. So was a man I had never met. "This is Mr. Calder," Denise said, gesturing toward him. "External counsel." Of course he was. They offered me water. I declined. The questions started gently. My background, my role in the department, my familiarity with the bridge project. They were laying groundwork, building a tone. Friendly, reasonable. Then the shift came. "Were you aware of any irregularities in the inspection process for the bridge?" Mr. Calder asked. "Yes," I said. "There were inconsistencies in the friction data." Denise's pen paused mid-stroke. "And did you report those inconsistencies?" he continued. "I documented them in the internal system. Do you have copies of that documentation?" I met his gaze. "The city has copies," he smiled thinly. "You understand that the system shows your credentials were used to modify certain entries after the incident." "I understand that someone used my credentials," I said. "Are you suggesting the system is incorrect?" "I am suggesting someone else had access." There it was, the moment, the pivot. Mr. Calder leaned back slightly, folding his hands. "That is a serious accusation." "So is negligent homicide," I replied quietly. The room went still. Denise looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. "We are not here to discuss criminal matters," Mr. Calder said smoothly. "We are here to determine whether you violated department policy." I nodded. "Then I would like to see the full access logs. Not summaries, not excerpts. The raw files. That will not be necessary. It will be for me." He held my gaze for a long moment, then closed the folder in front of him. "This interview is concluded for today." Denise looked startled. "But we still have questions." "We will be in touch," he said firmly, already standing. I left the building with my heart hammering but my posture steady. They had wanted me nervous, apologetic, confused. Instead, I had given them something else: resistance. In the parking lot, my phone buzzed. A new number. "Do not trust the lawyers." No greeting. No signature. Just that. I stared at the screen, then typed back one word. "Why?" The reply came almost instantly. "Because they are not the ones running this." I drove home slower than usual, checking my mirrors too often, watching every car that lingered too long behind me. Paranoia felt uncomfortably rational now. At my apartment, I found the building manager kneeling near the mailboxes, fiddling with a loose hinge. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Has anyone been asking about me?" I said, trying to keep my tone light. He hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. "Couple of men yesterday," he said. "Said they were with the city, wanted to know if you had any visitors lately." "And you told them?" "I told them I do not discuss tenants." Relief washed through me, sharp and unexpected. "Thank you. I am." He shrugged. "People deserve privacy." Inside my apartment, I set my bag down and opened the laptop again. The USB files stared back at me like an invitation and a warning all at once. If Nolan was involved, I needed to know how deep it went. If he was not, I needed to know who wanted me to think he was. I pulled up the archived system snapshots from the night of the crash. Not just the access logs, but the metadata. The background noise most people ignored. Automated processes, maintenance scripts, remote pings. That was when I noticed something strange. A scheduled remote session had been initiated at 1:17 in the morning. That was not unusual. The system ran routine health checks overnight, but this session did not match the usual pattern. It did not originate from city infrastructure. It originated from an external network. A private network. Someone had tunneled in. My phone rang, making me jump. This time, the caller ID showed a name I recognized. Elise Carter, the investigative journalist I had spoken to briefly years ago at a transportation conference, the one who had asked the uncomfortable questions everyone else avoided. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello? You probably should not have given your number to the moderator back then," she said. "But I am glad you did. Why are you calling me?" "Because someone sent me a package this morning. No return address." Inside was a USB drive and a note that said, "She will understand this." My stomach dropped. What was on it? Logs, backups, a timeline that looks a lot like someone trying to hang you out to dry. I closed my eyes. "Of course. Are you safe?" she asked. "Define safe." She exhaled softly. "Fair point. Listen, I do not know who is feeding me this information, but I know this. Whoever they are, they want the story out, and once it is out, the city cannot quietly bury you. And a feud ass. And a feud ass. And a feud ass. What do you want from me?" "Confirmation," she said. "Context. And honesty. Because if I publish this, there is no undoing it." I thought of the HR interview. The city lawyer's smile. The salt on Grant's cuff. The tarps in the wedding venue. The way Sienna had said understanding is dangerous right now. "I need time," I said. "You do not have much," Elise replied. "These stories close fast when powerful people get nervous." After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long while. Then I opened a new document and began writing down everything I knew, everything I suspected, everything I was afraid might be true. Names, dates, places, threads that did not yet connect but might. Grant Mercer. Mercer Infrastructure Solutions. Nolan Pike. City Legal. External Counsel. Sienna Silence. It was not a map yet, but it was becoming one. Late that evening, as I was standing at the sink washing a single mug, I heard footsteps outside my door. Slow, deliberate, then the faint sound of something sliding along the carpet. I froze. When the building fell quiet again, I moved carefully to the door and opened it. A manila envelope lay on the floor. No knock, no warning, just waiting. Inside were photocopies, old ones, grainy, hard to read, but the header was clear. Municipal Oversight Committee. Confidential. I flipped through the pages, pulse climbing. There were references to procurement irregularities, to political pressure, to donors, to expedited approvals tied to campaign contributions. And more than once, I saw the same name appear in the margins. Grant Mercer. Tucked behind the last page was a single handwritten note. "You are not crazy. You are not alone. But trust carefully." I stood there in the hallway, envelope in hand, my apartment door still open behind me. Whoever was helping me had access to records, to systems, to my life, and they were close, very close. The envelope sat on my kitchen table like it belonged there, as if it had always been part of the room and I was only just now noticing it. Municipal Oversight Committee. Confidential. The words carried weight, because they were never meant to be seen by people like me. I read the pages again slowly, not skimming this time. Names, dates, meeting notes, phrases that sounded harmless on the surface and corrosive underneath. Expedited review. Strategic partnership. public interest alignment. Every line was careful, every sentence just vague enough to deny intent. But the margins told the truth. Handwritten notes, question marks, underlined names. Grant Mercer appeared again and again. The documents were not enough to convict anyone of anything, but they were enough to prove a pattern. Enough to prove that people with power had been bending process for a long time. Enough to explain why the HR interview had felt less like an inquiry and more like a performance. Someone had decided on a story before they ever asked me a question. My phone buzzed on the counter. I half expected another warning. Another anonymous threat. Instead, it was a calendar reminder I had forgotten to delete. Venue walkthrough with Sienna, followed by cake tasting. I stared at the reminder for a long moment, then deleted it. Some lines did not need to be crossed again. Still, my sister's silence weighed on me. Her text from earlier. Please stop digging. The way she had flinched when I mentioned the tarps. The way she had looked past me when Grant arrived, like she was bracing for impact. She knew something. Maybe not everything, but enough. And if she knew something, she was in danger too. I did not call her. I did not text. I drove. The drive to her apartment took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of rehearsing what I might say, and deleting every version before it could reach my mouth. You cannot ask someone to confess to something they have not admitted to themselves. You can only create space for the truth to land. Her building lobby smelled like fresh paint and expensive candles, the kind of place designed to look peaceful, even when the people inside were anything but. She opened the door on the second knock. For a second, she looked like my sister again, hair in a messy bun, no makeup, one sock missing, relief flickering across her face before she could hide it. You should not be here, she said softly. I know. She stepped aside anyway. Her apartment was warm. Too warm. The heat was turned up higher than usual. On the coffee table sat a stack of wedding magazines, untouched. On the couch, a folded Mercer infrastructure hoodie. Grant left that, I said, nodding toward it. Her eyes followed mine. He practically lives here now. Does he feel safe here? She hesitated. What does that mean? I walked to the window and looked out at the street below. 2 cars passed. One slowed, then continued. It means people under pressure tend to hover near the things they want to control, I said. She wrapped her arms around herself. You are scaring me. I am trying to understand, I said. And I am trying to protect you. Her voice cracked. From who? I turned back to face her. That depends on what you tell me. Silence filled the space between us. Thick, deliberate. Finally, she spoke. If I tell you everything, will you promise me something? What? That you will not burn the world down with it. I searched her face. The sister who had taught me to ride a bike. The one who had stood between me and bullies in middle school. The one who had once told me that truth mattered more than comfort. I cannot promise that, I said quietly. But I can promise I will not lie to myself about what is right. Her shoulders sagged. I was afraid you would say that. She moved to the couch and sat. I sat across from her, leaving the coffee table between us like a boundary neither of us was ready to cross. I did not plan for any of this, she said. I met Grant at a fundraiser. He was charming, attentive. Everyone wanted to be around him. It felt safe. Power often does, I said. She nodded. Then things started to shift. Subtle things, comments about how certain processes were inefficient, how people like you were idealistic, how systems needed adjustments. Adjustments, I repeated. He never said anything directly illegal, she added quickly. He was careful. He is always careful. Except with his coat cuff, I said before I could stop myself. She looked up sharply. What? Nothing. She studied me for a moment. You know more than you are saying. Yes. And you are not going to stop. No. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Then you need to know this. There are people above Grant. People who do not show up to venue tours or charity dinners. People who do not leave evidence in public places. My chest tightened. City officials. Some, she admitted. Donors. Consultants. Advisors. The kind of people who can end careers without touching a keyboard. Like mine. Yes. The word hung in the air, heavy with guilt. I stood slowly and walked to the coffee table, picked up the Mercer hoodie, turned it over in my hands. "When did you realize?" I asked. She swallowed. "The night of the crash." My head snapped up. "You knew that night?" "I did not know everything," she said quickly, "but I knew something was wrong." Grant came home later than usual. He was tense. He kept checking his phone. He said something about the weather reports being off, about the treatment, crew not following protocol. "And you said nothing." "I thought he was just stressed," she whispered. "I thought if I stayed calm, if I did not ask too many questions, it would pass." I felt anger rise in my chest, sharp and unwelcome. I pushed it down. "Did it pass?" She shook her head. "It got worse. Meetings, late-night calls, people coming and going who never gave me their names." "Like who?" She hesitated. "A man in a gray suit. He came once while I was home. He and Grant talked in the kitchen with the door closed. When they finished, Grant looked shaken." "A city lawyer?" I asked. "I do not know." He never said. My mind flashed to the man who had come to my door. The leather folder, the careful tone, the courtesy visit. "Why did you not tell me any of this sooner?" I asked gently. Her eyes filled with tears, because the moment I started connecting the dots, I realized something else. "What?" "That if I admitted what I was seeing, I would have to choose between you and the life I thought I was building." I closed my eyes for a moment. That truth cut deeper than any threat. "Have you chosen?" I asked quietly. She looked at me, really looked at me. The way she had when we were kids and she was deciding whether to confess to something she had broken. "I do not know how," she said. We sat in silence after that. Not hostile, just exhausted. When I finally stood to leave, she reached out and grabbed my wrist. "Be careful," she said. "Please." "I have been careful my whole life," I replied. "Look where that got me." It's also a very died. Outside, the air felt colder than when I had arrived. I pulled my coat tighter and walked to my car. As I unlocked it, a man stepped out of the shadow between two parked vehicles. Not close, not threatening, just present. He raised one hand slightly in greeting, then spoke in a voice low enough that only I could hear. "You should not be here alone." I froze. "You should not be talking to your sister about this," he added calmly. I studied his face. Early 40s. Plain features. The kind of person who could disappear in a crowd easily. "Who are you?" I asked. "Someone who does not want to see you become collateral damage." "Then stop watching me from the dark," I said. A corner of his mouth twitched. "Fair point." He took a step back. "Call me if you find anything else. Anything concrete." He slipped a card into my hand before I could refuse. No logo, no title, just a name. Daniel Ruiz. And a phone number. Then he walked away, blending back into the night like he had never been there. I stood there for a long moment, the card warm in my palm. City legal, external counsel, anonymous tips, a journalist with matching files, a stranger with a name and a warning, my sister halfway between truth and fear, a man who owned half the city standing at the center of it all, smiling for cameras while his name appeared in confidential margins. By the time I drove home, one thing was clear. This was no longer just about clearing my name. This was about a system that had decided whose lives were expendable and whose reputations were worth protecting. And somehow, whether I wanted it or not, I had become part of the only thing standing in its way. I did not call Daniel Ruiz that night. Not because I did not trust him, but because trust had become something fragile, something I wanted to ration carefully. Everyone who entered this story did so for a reason. The problem was, I did not yet know whose reasons aligned with mine. I placed his card beside the manila envelope on my kitchen table, two small rectangles of paper that now represented two very different doors. One led toward official channels, subpoenas, procedures, exposure. The other led toward whatever shadow network had decided to feed me documents and anonymous warnings. Both paths carried risk. Both paths carried consequences. I slept a few hours, then woke to the sound of my phone vibrating across the counter. A text from Elise. "We need to talk today. Something new came in overnight. I typed back. Where? She sent an address. A diner on the east side. Public. Busy. Smart choice. The diner smelled like grease and coffee and old vinyl booths. The kind of place where conversations blended into one constant murmur. Elise sat in the back corner, laptop open, a mug cooling beside her. She looked up when I approached. Her eyes were sharp, awake in the way people get when adrenaline has replaced sleep. You look like someone who has not slept, she said. I could say the same. She closed the laptop halfway. Someone dropped a package on my doorstep last night. Actual package this time, not digital. ID. What was in it? She slid a small voice recorder across the table. Audio, raw, unedited. Of what? A call to emergency dispatch. The night of the crash, my chest tightened. The public version of that call was released already. This is not the public version. I did not touch the recorder yet. Who sent it to you? No return address, she said. No note, just this. Have you listened to it? Yes. And? Her gaze held mine. There is a voice in the background that should not be there. I picked up the recorder. It was older, the kind with physical buttons, not touchscreen. Cheap, easy to discard. Play it, I said. She pressed the button. Static filled the space between us. Then the familiar cadence of a dispatcher's voice. Calm, controlled, asking for location, number of passengers, visible injuries. The driver's voice was shaky, breathless, but coherent. Then, faintly, another voice. Not on the line. In the background. Male, low, controlled. Stay in lane 1. Do not move to the right. The driver's voice cracked. The road is glass, I cannot. Stay in lane 1. The dispatcher did not react. Could not hear it. The background voice was too faint, too close to the driver. I stopped the recording with my thumb. That is not possible, I said quietly. Elise did not blink. It is very possible. Why would someone be in the cab with him? I asked. Not in the cab, she said. That is not what it sounds like. I closed my eyes, replaying the tone in my head. The proximity, the quality. Bluetooth, I said. Yes. A call piped into the bus audio system, a private line, someone with access. Have you confirmed the voice? I asked. She hesitated. That was enough. I looked up at her. You think it is Grant. I think it sounds like him, she said carefully. But I am not a forensic audio analyst. I am a reporter. You are a good one. She gave a tight smile. That is debatable these days. I leaned back against the booth. My mind was already running through technical possibilities. The bus model, the communication system, the way subcontractors sometimes insisted on proprietary software. Mercer Infrastructure Solutions had overseen the installation of the new onboard systems 6 months ago. Grant had been at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, smiling, cutting tape, talking about safety. I looked back at the recorder. Why send this to you and not to police? Because police have to follow chain of custody, Elise said, and because someone clearly does not trust the official chain. Do you trust it? She considered the question. I trust patterns, and the pattern right now is that someone with access is trying to keep you in the game. Or trying to manipulate me. Both could be true. I slid the recorder back toward her. What do you want to do with this? Publish, she said simply. But not yet. Not without more. More what? Corroboration. Documentation. Someone inside willing to confirm that the audio systems can be accessed remotely and who had access that night. I thought of Nolan Pike. The name from the USB. The former supervisor with access to systems and logs. You think he is involved? Elise asked when I said his name. I think someone wants me to think he is, I replied. And someone else wants me to look closer. She nodded slowly. Then you need to talk to him. It's not right. Carefully, very carefully. We sat in silence for a moment, listening to the sounds of the diner. A waitress calling out orders, a child laughing, a man coughing into his sleeve. Normal life continuing just beyond the edges of what felt like a private crisis. Why are you doing this? I asked Elise suddenly. She studied me. Because I grew up here. Because my uncle was killed by a drunk driver on an unlit road the city had been warned about for years. Because nothing changed until someone embarrassed the right people publicly. Because truth matters more than access. I nodded. Fair answer. What about you? She asked. Why keep pushing when it is costing you everything? The question landed heavier than I expected. I thought of my badge, my job, my reputation, the way my coworkers avoided my eyes, the way my sister's voice had trembled in her apartment. Because if I stop, I said slowly, then the person who died on that bus just becomes a headline, a statistic, a brief inconvenience to people who will go on building roads exactly the same way. Elise's gaze softened. Then we are on the same side. Maybe, I said, but I still need to be careful. She reached into her bag and slid another item across the table, a printed still frame from a video. This came with the package too, she said. It was grainy. Nighttime. A vehicle stopped near the bridge entrance, a white utility van. No logo, no readable plate. But the timestamp in the corner was clear. 1 hour before the crash. What am I supposed to see? I asked. She tapped the bottom right corner. Zoom in on the passenger side mirror. I leaned closer. The resolution was poor, but there was something. A reflection. A face in profile, barely visible. It was not clear enough to identify, but the posture, the slope of the shoulders, the angle of the head. It felt familiar in the same way voices sometimes did when you could not yet name them. Do you have the video file? I asked. No, she said. Just this image. Someone is curating what we see. Yes, which means someone is also deciding what we do not see. Elise watched me closely. What are you thinking? I am thinking about Nolan Pike, I said. About access logs, about old servers, about a man who taught me to back up everything because systems fail and people lie. You think he is your source? I think he might be part of the pipeline. Pipeline to what? To the truth, I said, or to a version of it. When we left the diner, the sky was already darkening. Minnesota winter did not waste time with daylight. It closed around you early, like a door. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. Sienna, can you come over tonight? I need to talk. I stared at the message for a long moment. Elise noticed my expression. Your sister? Yes. Do you trust her? I do not know, I admitted. But I love her. That might be more dangerous than trust, she said gently. I nodded. Probably. Before I drove off, she touched my arm lightly. If anything happens, call me. If you find anything concrete, do not sit on it alone. I will not, I said, and I meant it. Sienna's apartment looked different at night. Quieter, less curated. The hallway light outside her door flickered slightly, like it could not decide whether to stay on. She opened the door almost immediately. You came, she said softly. I always come, I replied. Her living room was dim, only a single lamp on. She had changed into sweats. Her hair was down. She looked younger like this, more like the sister who used to sneak into my room with snacks and secrets. I cannot keep pretending anymore, she said as soon as the door closed. I did not speak. I waited. She paced once, then stopped in front of me. Something is happening around Grant that he is not telling me about. People calling late at night. Conversations that stop when I walk into the room. Men I do not recognize waiting outside the building. Like who? I asked. She swallowed. Like someone who looks like he belongs in law enforcement but never shows a badge. Like someone who always stands where cameras do not reach. A chill moved through me. Have you told him you notice? I asked. Yes, she said. He told me I was imagining things, that I was stressed, that the wedding was getting to me. And you believed him? I wanted to, she admitted. Because the alternative is that he is lying to you, I finished quietly. She nodded, tears welling but not falling. I do not know what is real anymore. I stepped closer. Then tell me everything you have seen. Every name, every place, every detail that feels wrong. Absolutely. She hesitated only a second, then nodded. Okay. And as she began to speak, haltingly at first, and then with growing urgency, I realized we were no longer circling the truth. We were approaching it directly, which meant, whether we were ready or not, everything was about to change. Sienna's voice was low at first, like she was afraid the walls might hear her. He started changing after the contracts got bigger, she said. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. Not all at once, just little things. New phone that never left his hand. New passwords every week. Meetings that weren't meetings. I stayed quiet. Letting her set the pace felt like the only way she would keep going. There is a place, she continued. A private office, not his main one, somewhere downtown. He goes there when he wants to talk to people he does not want connected to his company. Do you know where? I asked gently. She nodded. I do. He thinks I do not pay attention. Can you show me? Her shoulders tensed. You want to go there. I want to understand what is happening, I said. You said you cannot pretend anymore. This is part of that. She closed her eyes. For a long second, she did not move. Then she opened them and looked straight at me. Okay, she said. The word came out shaky but firm. But you have to promise me something. What? If we see something we were not meant to see, you do not confront him. Not there. Not like that. I nodded. I promise. The drive downtown felt longer than usual. Snow fell lightly, the kind that softened everything visually while making the streets more dangerous underneath. Sienna gave directions quietly, like she was afraid the GPS might be listening. We ended up in front of an older brick building that looked like a renovated warehouse. No sign, no logo, just tinted windows and a discreet entryway. He calls it a consultancy space, she said, for private meetings. And you have been inside? I asked. Once, she admitted. By accident. He forgot I had a spare key to his car, and I followed him when he said he was going to dinner with clients. Even talked of the 24 stew. What did you see? Not much, she said. That is the problem. It was too clean, too controlled, like a stage set. We parked across the street and waited. Neither of us knew what we were waiting for. A person, a sign, a moment that would tell us we were not imagining everything. 10 minutes passed. Then, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. A man stepped out. Gray suit, leather folder under his arm. My stomach tightened. The same man who had come to my apartment. The same careful posture. The same way of standing just outside the light. He did not look around, did not hesitate. He unlocked the door with a key and disappeared inside. Sienna sucked in a breath. That is him, she whispered. That is one of the men. Do you know his name? I asked. No. I stared at the building, heart thudding. This was no longer abstract, no longer theoretical. This was someone physically moving through the same spaces as us, shaping things behind closed doors. Let us go, Sienna said suddenly. Why? I asked. Because I feel like we are not supposed to be here. I understood that feeling. The way instinct prickles along the back of your neck before your mind catches up. We drove away without speaking. Halfway back to her apartment, she broke the silence. There is something else, she said quietly. I glanced at her. What? I did something, she said. Not on purpose. But it happened anyway. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Tell me, she swallowed. A few weeks ago, Grant asked me to use my laptop for something. He said his was updating. He needed to access a file quickly. What kind of file? I asked. He did not say. He just told me it was related to one of his contracts. He logged into something I had never seen before. A dashboard, with maps, data, timelines. A system interface, I murmured. Yes, I did not understand it. But when he left the room, it was still open. My pulse picked up. What did you do? She looked at me with a mix of guilt and fear. I took a picture, with my phone. My head snapped toward her. You did what? I do not know why, she said quickly. Something in me just knew I might need it someday, that it might matter. Do you still have it? I asked. She nodded. Show me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She unlocked her phone and opened her gallery. Scrolled, stopped. Then she turned the screen toward me. The image was blurry, taken hastily. But I could see enough. A dark interface, a map view, a highlighted route that looked suspiciously like the stretch of road leading to the bridge. Along the side were columns of data, timestamps, activity logs, remote access indicators. My breath caught. "This is not just construction management software," I said. "What is it?" she asked. "This is oversight," I said slowly. "Control. Monitoring. The kind of system you use when you want to see everything that moves through a network." "Like traffic?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "And like communications. And like access points." I studied the image more closely, zoomed in on a small label near the bottom. A project name. Winter Safe. "Do you recognize that?" Sienna asked. "No," I said, "but I want to." Back at her apartment, I emailed the photo to myself and then to Elise, along with a short message. "Do you recognize this system?" She replied within minutes. "Give me an hour." Sienna paced while we waited. I sat at the kitchen counter, pulling up everything I could find on my laptop about private infrastructure monitoring systems. There were dozens of companies, dozens of platforms, most of them marketed as safety solutions, efficiency tools, smart city integrations. The language was always the same. "We help you see everything. We help you prevent problems. We help you respond faster." Control disguised as care. Elise's reply came with an attachment. "This looks like a customized interface for a private data aggregation platform," she wrote. "These are usually used by security firms, not construction companies. They pull in feeds from cameras, sensors, communication networks. Whoever runs this does not just build roads. They watch people." I read the message twice. "They watch people," I repeated aloud. Sienna stopped pacing. "Grant watches people, or someone he works with does," I said. "And he has access." Her face drained of color. "That is not just corruption. That is something else." "Yes," I said quietly. "It is." My phone buzzed with another message. This one from an unknown number. "You are getting closer." A second message followed almost immediately. "Do not trust the sister." I stared at the screen, then slowly set the phone down. Sienna noticed the change in my expression. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," I lied. The word tasted bitter. I did not want to believe it. Did not want to consider that the person sitting across from me, shaking and scared and trying to be brave, could be anything other than my ally. But the thought lodged anyway. Quiet, persistent. I looked at her phone again. The photo. The timing. "Why did you really take this picture?" I asked carefully. She hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. "Because I was curious," she said. "It might have been the truth. Or it might have been a safer version of it. Either way, I realized something important in that moment. This was no longer a story where everyone could be neatly sorted into good and bad. Everyone was compromised in some way, including me. The evening wore on. We talked about logistics, about how to proceed carefully, about who to trust, about what not to say over the phone. By the time I stood to leave, the air between us felt heavier than when I had arrived. Not hostile, just altered. Like something delicate had shifted and could not be unshifted. At the door, Sienna reached for my hand. "I am trying," she said softly. "I need you to know that." I squeezed her fingers. "I know," but even as I said it, the anonymous text lingered in my mind. "Do not trust the sister." Outside, the snow had picked up. The parking lot lights cast long shadows across the ground. I walked to my car slowly, scanning the surroundings out of habit now. No one was watching openly. That did not mean no one was watching at all. When I got home, I opened my laptop again and stared at the winter archive files, at the logs, the access points, the pattern of manipulation. Then I opened a new document and typed one question at the top. Who benefits if Sienna stays clean? I did not have the answer yet, but I had the feeling I was about to find it. The question stayed on my screen long after midnight. Who benefits if Sienna stays clean? It was not a fair question. It was not a kind one, but it was the only one that mattered now. I stared at the cursor blinking beneath it, waiting for an answer I was not ready to see. Outside my window, a plow moved slowly down the street, pushing fresh snow into uneven ridges along the curb. The blade scraped and groaned. It was the sound of maintenance, of correction, of things being forced back into order. It should have comforted me. Instead, It sounded like warning. I minimized the document and opened the Winter archive files again. If I could not yet understand people, I could still understand systems. The logs were dense. Timestamps, session IDs, access points, automated routines. Most of it was noise. But buried in the noise were small anomalies, deviations, irregular patterns that did not belong. I filtered by user activity, by remote access sessions, by edits made outside normal maintenance windows. One cluster of activity stood out immediately. Not Grant, not Nolan, a third user. The name attached to the account was ordinary. Too ordinary. Sienna Lane. My breath left my body in a slow, controlled exhale. I did not panic. Not yet. I just stared at the line of text on the screen. User, slain. Access time, 12:48 a.m. Location, external secure network. Permissions. Temporary elevated. Temporary elevated permissions did not happen by accident. They were granted. They were approved. They were intentional. I clicked deeper. The session did not last long. 7 minutes. Just long enough to open a file, view a dashboard, and make a change. A change to a metadata tag. A small thing. A single variable adjusted by a decimal point. The kind of adjustment that would shift blame without triggering an obvious alarm. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding but hands steady. It was possible the account had been spoofed. Possible the credentials had been stolen. Possible this was another layer of manipulation designed to make me doubt my sister. But the timing. The access occurred on the same night she told me Grant had borrowed her laptop. I thought of the photo she had shown me, the blurred image of the dashboard, the way she had hesitated when I asked why she took it, the way she had said she was curious. Curiosity did not explain elevated permissions. Fear crept in, cold and precise. I did not call her. I did not text. Instead, I copied the relevant log files into a new folder and labeled it simply Truth. Then I backed that folder up twice. Once to an encrypted drive. Once to a cloud account under a name that was not mine. Documentation was protection. Nolan had taught me that. If he had been right about anything, he had been right about that. My phone buzzed just after 1 a.m. A message from Elise. We ran the image you sent through a contact at a cybersecurity firm. The interface matches a private platform used by high-level contractors working with government oversight groups. It is not illegal to use, but access is tightly controlled. Very tightly controlled, I typed back. Could someone get access through someone else's device? Yes, she replied, but they would need permission. Or trust. Trust. The words sat heavily between my fingers and the keyboard. I closed the laptop without replying. Sleep did not come easily after that. When it finally did, it was shallow and restless, filled with half-formed dreams of dashboards and bridges and voices whispering just out of reach. I woke to my phone ringing. Sienna. For a second, I considered not answering. Considered letting it go to voicemail, preserving the fragile bubble of uncertainty a little longer. But I answered. Hey, she said softly. Hey. There was a pause. You sound tired. So do you. A faint, humorless laugh. I did not sleep. Why not? I asked. I keep thinking someone is going to knock on my door, she admitted, or that I am going to wake up and realize I imagined all of this. You did not imagine it, I said carefully. Another pause. Longer this time. Did you find something? She asked. The question was too controlled, too deliberate. I am still looking, I said. I wish you would stop, she whispered. Just for a little while. Just until after the wedding. Just until things settle. Things do not settle on their own, I replied. She did not answer that. Instead, she said, Grant wants to have dinner tonight. All of us. You, me, him. Like a reset. My stomach tightened. A reset for what? So we can stop circling each other like this, she said. So we can be honest. Honest. I thought of the log file, the user session, the metadata change. When? I asked. 7, she said quickly. At his place. I will think about it, I said. Please do more than think, she said. Please come. After we hung up, I stood at my kitchen counter for a long time, staring at the wall as if it might offer guidance. Dinner with Grant was a risk. Emotionally, strategically, physically. But it was also an opportunity. If Sienna was involved, I needed to understand how and why. If she was being used, I needed to see the shape of the leverage. If Grant thought he could control the narrative, he might underestimate me in person. Powerful people often did. I texted Elise. They invited me to dinner. Her reply came fast. With who? Grant. And my sister. A beat. Do not go alone. I typed back. I will not. Then I stared at Daniel Ruiz's card on my table. The man who had warned me in the parking lot. The man who had said to call if I found anything concrete. I picked up the card and turned it over between my fingers. Then I dialed. He answered on the second ring. Harper Lane, he said, like he had been expecting me. You said to call if I found something, I said. Yes, I found something, I said, and I think it involves someone I love. There was silence on the line for a moment. Then he said quietly, Those are always the hardest cases? Ariam, I am being invited to dinner tonight, I continued, with the person at the center of this. And you are considering going, he said. Yes. You want protection, he said. It was not a question. I want perspective, I corrected, and I want to know what I am walking into. He exhaled slowly. Tell me where. I gave him the address. Another pause. That is a bold move on their part, he said finally. Why? Because they think they are still in control. End quote. The line went quiet for a second. If you go, he added, do not reveal what you know. Do not confront anyone. Just listen. People reveal more when they think they are winning. I can do that, I said. I will be nearby, he said. Not inside, but close enough. Why help me? I asked, before I could stop myself. He did not answer immediately. Because systems only change when someone inside them refuses to look away, he said finally. And because I have seen what happens when no one speaks up. The call ended shortly after. I stood there with the phone in my hand, feeling the weight of the day settle in my chest. Dinner with Grant. My sister's voice on the line, pleading without pleading, a log file that suggested betrayal, a stranger willing to stand nearby in the dark. I walked back to my laptop and opened the truth folder one last time. The line with Sienna's username stared back at me. I did not delete it. I did not hide it. I saved it. Then I closed the laptop gently, like I was closing the door on a version of my life that no longer existed. At 7 o'clock, I would sit across from the man who might have destroyed my career, across from the sister who might have helped him, or might have been trapped by him, or might have been something more complicated than either. Either way, I knew this much. Tonight, someone was going to slip, and whoever did was not going to be able to take it back. Grant's house sat on a quiet cul-de-sac lined with identical trees and identical mailboxes, the kind of place that looked peaceful from the outside and suffocating once you stepped in. Soft yellow light glowed through the front windows. Somewhere inside, music played low and tasteful. Jazz, probably. Always curated. I parked 2 houses down like Daniel had suggested, not because I expected danger, but because I had learned to respect patterns. People who liked control also liked surveillance. They liked knowing who came and went. The front door opened before I could knock. Sienna stood there barefoot, wearing a sweater that had once been mine. You came, she said, relief flooding her face. I said I would, I replied. She stepped aside to let me in. The warmth inside hit me immediately, heavy with the smell of roasted garlic and citrus. Grant was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up again, moving between stove and counter like he belonged there, like this was normal. Harper, he said brightly. Good. I was hoping tonight would feel simple. Simple, I echoed. He smiled. Dinner. No tension. No unspoken things. Sienna glanced at me, her eyes flickering with something that looked like apology and hope tangled together. We sat at the table, candles lit, plates warm, the kind of setup that was meant to feel intimate and sincere. Grant served the food himself. Slow roasted chicken, lemon potatoes, everything arranged with care. You remember how to make this? I asked. gesturing at the plate. He chuckled. I am capable of learning domestic skills, yes. Sienna smiled weakly. We ate in silence for the first few minutes, the kind that pretends to be comfortable until it stretches too long. So, Grant said finally, setting his fork down. How are you holding up? I am surviving, I said. Surviving is underrated, he replied. Most people fall apart when institutions turn on them. It's another, dear. That depends on how much faith they had in the institution, I said. His eyes held mine, calm, calculated. You still believe the system can be corrected? I believe the truth matters, I said. Sienna shifted in her seat. Grant nodded slowly. Truth is complicated. Only when people benefit from it being complicated, I said. A pause. I know you have been looking into things, he said, voice still even. I know you have questions. That is what engineers do, I said. We look for failure points. Sometimes there are failure points in people, he said softly. Not just structures. I felt Sienna's gaze on me. What are you suggesting? I asked. He leaned back in his chair. I am suggesting that you have been through a trauma, a public one, a humiliating one. That can distort perspective. You think I am imagining this, I said. I think you are being encouraged to see patterns that might not exist, he corrected. By people who do not have your best interests at heart. I thought of Elise, of Daniel, of the USB, of the logs. Who would those people be? I asked. Journalists looking for a story, he said. Strangers with agendas. Anyone who benefits from chaos. Do you? I asked quietly. He did not answer immediately. Sienna's hands trembled slightly where they rested in her lap. Grant, she said softly. Maybe we should just… No, he said gently, not looking at her. We should not keep dancing around this. He turned back to me. I care about Sienna. I care about her family. That includes you, whether you believe that or not. I nodded once. Care is a broad word. It is, he agreed, and sometimes care looks like asking someone to stop before they hurt themselves. You asked me to stop before, I said. At the bridge. Sienna's head snapped up. What? Grant's expression did not change. But the air shifted. At the bridge, I repeated. You told me to go home. To stop. Sienna looked between us. You were there? Grant exhaled slowly. I drove by. I saw you. It did not seem appropriate for you to be there given circumstances. You were worried about optics, I said. I was worried about you, he said smoothly. I studied his face. Then answer me this. Why did you have road salt on your coat that night? The room went still. Sienna's breath hitched. Grant glanced down at his sleeve, then back at me. Road salt? Yes, I said, on the cuff, the same kind that had been improperly applied to the bridge. He stared at me for a long second. Then he smiled. But this time, the smile did not reach his eyes. You are observant, he said. That is both your strength and your weakness. Grant, Sienna whispered. What is she talking about? He reached for her hand automatically, but she did not take it. Harper is under a lot of stress, he said gently. She is connecting things that are not connected. I looked at Sienna. Ask him why he needed access to a system called WinterSafe. Her eyes widened. Grant's posture shifted almost imperceptibly. A tightening of shoulders, a stillness that had not been there before. That is a private platform, he said. It has nothing to do with you. You logged into it using her laptop, I said. Sienna's face drained of color. What? He turned toward her now. I told you that file was confidential. Have. You told me it was about a contract, she said weakly. It was, he said. And that is all you need to know. No, I said quietly. It is not. Silence stretched again. But this time it was heavy with truth that had nowhere left to hide. I saw the logs, I said. I saw the access records. Sienna's head snapped toward me. What logs? I met her eyes. Your username appeared in them. The room felt like it tilted. What? She breathed. Grant's gaze sharpened. You went into secured data? I went into archived data that someone wanted me to see, I said. He let out a short, humorless laugh. Of course. Sienna stood abruptly. My username was used for what? I held her gaze. For a session on the night of the crash. Her knees seemed to buckle slightly. She gripped the back of her chair. I did not, she began, then stopped. Grant stood as well, voice calm but firm. Enough. Do not say enough, Sienna said, suddenly louder. Do not control this. He turned toward her. You are upset. Sit down. No, she said. Tell me what you did. His jaw tightened. I watched the exchange, the dynamic suddenly clearer than it had ever been. The way his tone shifted when he wanted authority. The way she responded to it out of habit. I did what I had to do to keep things stable, he said carefully. For us. For us, she repeated. Or for you. For the life we are building, he said. For the future we talked about. It's tend. You told me nothing about any of this, she said, her voice shaking. Because I was protecting you. From what? She demanded. He hesitated. And in that hesitation, everything changed. From the consequences, he admitted quietly. The word consequences hung in the air like smoke. Sienna looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. What consequences? He opened his mouth to answer. I did not get to hear what he would have said. A sharp knock sounded at the front door. 3 firm raps. Not polite, not casual, deliberate. Grant's eyes flicked toward the door. Sienna froze. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A single text from Daniel. They are moving. The knock came again, louder this time. Grant's jaw tightened. His composure cracked just slightly. I need you both to stay calm, he said. Sienna's voice trembled. Who is at the door? He did not answer. I moved toward the entryway without thinking. Toward truth. Toward whatever was about to break open. Behind me, I heard Sienna whisper my name like a plea. Ahead of me, the door waited. And on the other side of it, I was suddenly very sure, was the end of pretending. The third knock did not come. Instead, the doorbell rang once. Long, flat, impersonal. Grant's hand hovered in the air like he was deciding whether to stop time or step into it. Sienna stood frozen behind him. I could hear my own heartbeat louder than the music still playing faintly from the speakers. Grant recovered first. He always did. He walked to the door and opened it with the same controlled expression he wore at fundraisers and ribbon cuttings. 2 men stood on the porch, both in dark coats, neither in uniform. The one in front spoke calmly. Mr. Mercer. Grant inclined his head. Gentlemen, we need a few minutes of your time, the man said. For what purpose? Grant asked. Routine questions, the second man said. You will find it easier if you cooperate. They did not show badges. They did not introduce themselves. They did not step inside. They did not need to. Grant smiled faintly. Now is not a convenient time. 80. Aska, we understand, the first man said. It rarely is. Sienna moved closer to the doorway, her voice tight. Who are you? The men did not look at her. The first man addressed Grant again. We will wait. Grant held their gaze for a long moment. Something passed between them that I could not read, but it was not fear. It was calculation. Negotiation without words. Then he nodded. 5 minutes. He turned back toward us and spoke quietly. Stay inside. Sienna shook her head. No, you do not get to tell me what to do anymore. He looked at her for a second too long. Something raw flickered there before he buried it. Please, he said softly. Just trust me. She hesitated, that old instinct tugging at her. Then she looked at me instead. I did not nod. I did not reassure her. I simply held her gaze. Her decision came slowly, painfully. She stepped forward. Grant watched her with something like resignation. Then he turned back to the men. Outside, he said. They moved off the porch together, just out of earshot. The front door remained open. Cold air slipped inside, sharp and clean. Honest, we stood there in silence, listening to the muffled cadence of voices we could not make out. Sienna's hands were clenched so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. This is what you meant, she said quietly, when you said there were people above him. Yes, I said. They are not police, she whispered. No, I said again. She swallowed hard. Then what are they? Enforcement, I said, of a different kind. We watched as Grant spoke, as the men listened, as one of them occasionally glanced back toward the house, toward the windows, toward us. "Do they know about you?" Sienna asked. "I do not know," I said honestly. "But they know something has shifted." Her voice broke. "I never wanted this." I turned toward her. "What did you want?" She stared at the floor. "A life that felt stable, a future that felt secure, someone who made the chaos in my head go quiet. And now?" I asked gently. She looked up at me, eyes wet. "Now I think I helped create the chaos." The words came out in a rush after that, like they had been pressing against her ribs for weeks. "He told me to log in that night," she said, "not directly, not in words. But he said his system had glitched, that it needed to show something slightly different so the city would not overreact, that it was temporary, that it would protect people. Dably. The port now. What did he ask you to change?" I asked. "A single value," she said. "One number. He showed me where to click. He said it was just cleaning up noise in the data." "And you believed him?" "I wanted to," she whispered. "Because the alternative was admitting I was engaged to someone who could let people die and then call it noise." My chest tightened. "Why did you not tell me sooner?" She looked at me with raw honesty. "Because I knew what you would do, and I was afraid of losing you. The front door creaked slightly in the wind. Outside, Grant's conversation ended. The men nodded once, then one of them handed him something small, a card, a phone. I could not tell. They turned and walked away without another glance. Grant remained on the sidewalk, staring after them long after they had gone. Then he turned back toward the house, toward us. He did not look angry. He looked tired. He stepped inside and closed the door carefully, as if noise itself might be dangerous. Sienna straightened instinctively. Grant studied her face, then mine. "They are accelerating," he said quietly. "Who are they?" Sienna demanded. He hesitated. "Just long enough to be honest without meaning to be. People who invested in a version of this city that does not include failure," he said. "Or exposure. People you made deals with," I said. "Yes," he admitted. Sienna's breath hitched. "You told me you were just trying to protect our future." "I was," he said. "From them as much as from anything else." "By using me," she said. "I did not think you would be dragged into it this way," he said quietly. "I thought I could contain it." I laughed softly. "It surprised all of us. Containment is not safety," I said. "It is just delayed collapse." Grant looked at me with something like respect. "You always were perceptive." "That is not a compliment anymore," I said. Sienna took a step away from him. "You made me part of this." "I have, Dean." "You were already part of it by being close to me," he said. "I just did not tell you how deep it went." Her voice broke. "You let me think I was just helping with logistics." "I let you believe what you needed to believe to keep breathing," he said. "The same way you are letting yourself believe I am the only one responsible for this." The words hung between us. I felt it then, the subtle shift. "Who else?" I asked quietly. Grant did not answer immediately. Sienna looked at him sharply. "Who else?" "Grant." He exhaled slowly. "The oversight group, the advisory board, several donors, a handful of city officials who preferred not to know details but enjoyed the outcomes." "And the data manipulation?" I pressed. "The system was designed to look like maintenance," he said, "to look like error correction, to look like the city protecting itself from liability," I said. "Yes, by sacrificing me," I added. He did not deny it. "I thought you would weather it," he said. "You were competent, resilient. Your career would recover." "And the person who died?" I asked. He flinched at that, a real flinch, the first I had seen. "That was not part of the plan," he said quietly. "Death rarely is," I replied. Silence filled the room. Sienna sank onto the couch, her face in her hands. "What have we done?" she whispered. Grant looked at her with something like genuine sorrow. "We tried to build something stable inside an unstable system." "And you chose the system," she said. "I chose survival," he corrected. "For both of us." I looked between them. The dynamic, The tragedy of it. The way good intentions curdled when mixed with fear and ambition. Those men, I said. They came because something changed. Yes, Grant said. What? I asked. Someone outside my control started sharing information, he said. Logs, files, material that was meant to remain buried. Elise? I said. Not just her, he said. Someone inside the city infrastructure. Nolan Pike, I said. He did not react, which was its own answer. Sienna looked up sharply. Nolan? Your supervisor? I nodded. He was not supposed to act yet, Grant said quietly. He was supposed to wait. Wait for what? Sienna asked. For a cleaner transition, he said. For narrative alignment. For an outcome that did not involve police cars and headlines. And now? I asked. Now they are losing patience, he said. And when they lose patience, they do not protect their assets. They replace them. A cold understanding settled in my chest. You, I said. Yes, he admitted. Sienna stared at him. They are going to discard you. They already are, he said. Her voice shook. Then why are you still defending them? He looked at her with exhausted honesty. Because they are not the worst consequence. What is? She asked. He looked at me. Public truth, he said. Uncontrolled exposure. That is what they fear most. And that is what will hurt the most people if it comes out without structure. You mean it will hurt the people who built this? I said. It will hurt everyone who depends on the stability of the city, he said. Contracts will collapse. Funding will freeze. Projects will stall. People will lose jobs. You were pressed. And people already lost their lives, I said quietly. He did not argue with that. Sienna's voice was barely audible. What happens now? Grant looked at the floor. Now you decide which collapse you want to live with. I felt the weight of it then. Not just the moral decision. The structural one. Expose everything at once and watch the system convulse. Or move slowly, deliberately, through channels that could absorb the shock without breaking entirely. This was no longer about revenge. Or even about justice in the way I had imagined it. This was about damage control in a corrupt ecosystem. I thought of Elise, of Daniel, of Nolan, of the USB, of the logs, of the countless people who would never know how close their daily safety came to collapsing under political and financial pressure. Sienna looked at me, her eyes full of something like pleading. Tell me what to do. Grant looked at me too. In that moment, I understood something deeply uncomfortable. They were both waiting for me to choose, not just between them, but between versions of the truth, between public destruction and controlled reckoning, between a clean story and a messy one, between losing my sister entirely and dragging her through the consequences of her actions. I did not answer them right away. Instead, I reached into my pocket and felt the familiar rectangle of my phone. The truth folder sat there, waiting. So did Elise's unread messages. So did Daniel's number. So did every person who had been quietly waiting for someone to refuse to look away. And I knew, with a clarity that hurt, that whatever I chose next would not feel like victory. It would feel like loss, just of different kinds. The house felt smaller after that. Not physically, but emotionally, like the walls had shifted inward while we were talking. Grant stood near the window, arms folded, gaze distant. Sienna sat on the couch with her hands pressed together, as if she could hold herself intact through sheer will. And I stood between them, the weight of two impossible futures pressing against my ribs. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Sienna broke the silence. If I tell the truth, she said quietly, what happens to me? The question was not dramatic. It was practical, honest. Grant turned toward her slowly. She becomes collateral, he said. Like everyone else who does not understand the rules. I looked at him. Or she becomes someone who chooses to live with herself. He did not argue with that. Sienna's eyes moved between us. Those men, she said, the ones who came to the door, are they coming back? Grant nodded once. Yes. Action. When? She asked. Soon, he said. They are not patient with uncertainty. The word hung there. Uncertainty. That was all this was to them. A variable. A disruption. A risk to manage. Not a life, not a family, not a death. Just risk. I pulled my phone from my pocket. The screen lit up with missed notifications, messages from Elise, a text from Daniel, both of them waiting. "What are you doing?" Sienna asked. "I am deciding," I said. Grant watched me carefully. "Deciding what?" Man, whether you were right," I said, "or whether you have been lying to yourself this entire time." He did not flinch. "About what?" "That this is about stability," I continued. "That this is about protecting the city. That this is about minimizing harm." Sienna looked between us, confused. I stepped closer to Grant. "Tell me something honestly. If I stayed silent, if I deleted everything I had, if Elise never published, if Daniel never pushed for charges, if this all went away quietly, would it stop here?" Grant held my gaze. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, he said, "No." Sienna inhaled sharply. "It would stabilize," he added. "For a while." "And then?" I asked. "Then another compromise," he admitted. "Another adjustment, another moment where the data needed to be managed. And another person might die," I said. He did not answer. He did not have to. Sienna's voice broke. "You told me it was a one-time thing." Grant turned to her slowly. "It never is." The truth in that sentence settled over the room like ash. Sienna stood, slowly, like someone learning how to carry her own weight again. "You used me," she said, not accusing, just stating. "Yes," he said. "You lied to me." "Yes." "You let me believe I was helping," she said, voice shaking but clear, "when I was actually helping you hide something that killed someone." "Yes." Each word hit with more force than shouting ever could. Her shoulders squared. Then she looked at me. "What do you need from me?" she asked. Not "what should I do?" Not "what do you want?" Not "please protect me." "What do you need from me?" It was the first truly adult question she had asked since this began. I swallowed hard. "I need you to tell the truth," I said. "Not to me. To people who can act on it." Grant's head lifted slightly. "You are asking her to destroy her life." "I am asking her to reclaim it," I said. Sienna closed her eyes for a moment. "I am terrified," she admitted. "I know," I said. "When I imagine what comes next," she continued, "I see courtrooms, headlines, people calling me names, losing friends, losing work, losing everything." "Yes," I said quietly. She opened her eyes again. "And when I imagine staying silent, I see something worse." I did not speak. She turned toward Grant. "You told me you loved me," she said. His expression softened, just slightly. "I do." "There is so. Then do not ask me to live with your lies," she said. Something in Grant's face cracked. Not fully, not dramatically, but enough. "You do not understand what you are walking into," he said quietly. "I understand enough," she replied, "and I am not your asset." The word asset stung because it was accurate. She turned back to me. "What happens next?" she asked. I looked at my phone again. Elise had sent another message. "We are ready to publish the first piece. But I need confirmation. Real confirmation. Someone who was there. Someone who admits what happened." Daniel's message was simpler. "If you have a cooperating witness, now is the time." I held the phone loosely in my hand. "This," I said gently, "is the moment where you choose whether you are someone this happened to or someone who does something about it." Sienna stared at the floor for a long second. Then she lifted her head. "I will talk," she said. Grant's eyes closed briefly, not in anger, in something closer to grief. "You do not know what they will do," he said softly. Sienna met his gaze. "I know what you already did." The room went silent. I stepped back slightly and typed a message to Elise. "She is willing to speak. She was involved. She wants to tell the truth." The reply came almost instantly. "Bring her somewhere safe." I then texted Daniel. "We have a cooperating witness. She is ready." His response was short. "I will arrange protection." I looked up. Sienna was watching me with wide, steady eyes. "Is this really happening?" "Yes," I said. Grant remained still, almost unnaturally so. You are choosing public chaos over controlled damage, he said quietly. I am choosing accountability over convenience, I replied. He studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Then you should leave, he said. Now. Why? Sienna asked. Because the people who came to the door tonight will not wait for your testimony, he said. And once they realize you are no longer compliant, they will change tactics. A chill moved through me. What kind of tactics? I asked. Grant did not answer immediately. They will try to discredit you, he said. They will try to isolate you. And if that does not work, he stopped. Sienna's voice was barely above a whisper. If that does not work, they will make an example, he finished. The air felt heavier after that. I moved quickly. Sienna, I said, get your coat. Only essentials. Phone, wallet, keys, nothing else. She did not hesitate. She moved with sudden purpose, like something inside her had locked into place. Grant watched silently as she gathered her things. You are really doing this, he said softly. She stopped in the doorway and turned back to him. Yes, she said. For a moment, he looked like he might say something else, something honest, something unguarded. But whatever it was, he swallowed it. She turned and walked out. I followed. Cold air hit us the moment we stepped outside. Sharp, clean, real. My phone buzzed again. A new message. Unknown number. Too late. I showed the screen to Sienna, her face drained of color. We are not too late, I said firmly. We are just early. She looked at me, breathing shallow. Do you believe that? She asked. I have to, I said. We moved toward the car quickly. Behind us, the front door opened. Grant stood in the doorway, framed by warm light. He did not call out. He did not follow. He just watched, as if he already knew this was the last time he would see either of us as we were. As we drove away, Sienna stared out the window, silent. After a few blocks, she spoke. I do not know who I am going to be after this, she said. I glanced at her. You are going to be someone who chose truth when it cost you everything. She swallowed hard. That does not sound heroic. It is not, I said. It is just honest. One. Her hands trembled slightly in her lap. Do you think he ever really cared about me? She asked quietly. The question landed harder than anything else that night. I considered it carefully. Yes, I said finally. I think he did. She closed her eyes briefly. And I think that made him more dangerous, I added gently. Not less. We drove the rest of the way in silence. Somewhere behind us, in that quiet cul-de-sac, a carefully built life was beginning to collapse. Not with sirens, not with shouting, just with absence. And ahead of us, waiting in shadows and courtrooms and headlines, was the next collapse. The one that would be louder, the one that would hurt more, the one that would change everything. We did not go home. Daniel had told me to meet him at a place that did not look like safety, a 24-hour pharmacy near the edge of downtown. Bright lights, too many cameras, too many people to disappear in. Public places are harder to control, he had said. For now, that is what we need. Sienna sat in the passenger seat, hands folded so tightly in her lap they had gone white. She did not cry. Not yet. She looked like someone who had stepped off a cliff and was still waiting to feel the fall. When we pulled into the parking lot, Daniel was already there, leaning against a plain sedan. No suit tonight, no folder, just a dark jacket and eyes that missed nothing. He opened the back door of his car. Get in, he said calmly. Sienna flinched. He noticed. Not like that, he added gently. I am not taking you anywhere. I just want you out of your vehicle while we talk. I have. She nodded slowly and stepped out. The cold air hit her like a shock, but she did not complain. Daniel spoke quietly, efficiently. I am not law enforcement. I am not a hero. I am someone who has spent years watching systems protect themselves at the expense of people who cannot fight back. Tonight, you chose not to be protected by the system. That has consequences. Sienna looked at him. I know. Do you still want to speak? He asked. Yes, she said. No hesitation. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. Then we moved carefully. We sat in his car while he made calls. Not dramatic ones, not coded. Just steady, practical conversations. Arrangements, names, locations. I caught fragments. Protective housing, cooperating witness, independent counsel, chain of custody. This was not revenge. This was infrastructure. Slow, deliberate, unglamorous. The kind of work that actually changed things. When he ended the last call, he turned to Sienna. You will meet with an attorney tomorrow morning. You will tell them everything. Not a polished version. Not the version that makes you look better. The real one. She nodded. You will not control the outcome, he continued, but your honesty will shape it. She swallowed hard. What about Grant? Daniel did not soften his answer. That will depend on how much he decides to protect himself versus how much he decides to tell the truth. End quote. Sienna looked away toward the pharmacy window, where a cashier scanned items for a man buying cough syrup and batteries. Ordinary life, continuing without any awareness of the storm gathering just beyond the glass. And the people above him? She asked quietly. Daniel's gaze did not waver. This is not the kind of story that ends neatly, but it is the kind that forces change. He looked at me then. Only if you let it. The next weeks did not unfold like movies. There were no dramatic arrests in the middle of the night, no headlines screaming confessions, no viral clips that neatly wrapped truth in outrage. There were interviews, depositions, legal documents, long hours in rooms that smelled like coffee and paper and fatigue. Elise published carefully, one piece at a time, each supported by documents, by logs, by expert analysis, by testimony that could not be dismissed as emotional. Sienna's role was not hidden, not softened. She did not get a heroic edit. She was described accurately. A person who had been manipulated. A person who had made a choice. A person who decided to correct that choice when it mattered. The public reaction was brutal at first. Traitor, accomplice, gold digger, naive. But over time, as more documents surfaced, as more names emerged, as more insiders quietly chose to cooperate rather than be exposed, the narrative shifted. Not toward forgiveness, toward complexity. Grant did not disappear. He resigned from his company within days of the first major story. His attorneys released statements about misinterpretation, about rogue systems, about personal failures that did not represent corporate culture. Then he did something no one expected. He requested a private meeting with federal investigators. No press, no spectacle, just a quiet choice. The deals that followed were not public. The details were sealed. But people began to step down from committees. Contracts were paused. Oversight policies were rewritten. It did not feel like justice. It felt like something slower. Recalibration. Sienna took a plea deal, not because she was forced to, but because she insisted. She did not want immunity. She wanted accountability. The judge acknowledged her cooperation. Her sentence was minimal. Community service, ongoing compliance, a permanent mark on her record. The mark mattered to her. It should, she told me once, sitting across from me in a small cafe months later. If I ever start justifying bad choices again, I want to remember exactly what they cost. She had cut her hair shorter, stopped wearing makeup, taken a job with a nonprofit that worked on transportation transparency. Not to atone, to rebuild. My name was cleared officially, slowly, without fanfare. A quiet correction buried deep in city documentation. A formal apology from the department. A reinstated license. Offers to return. I did not go back. Not because I was bitter, but because I understood now that systems did not need me inside them as much as they needed people willing to challenge them from the outside. I took a job with an independent safety review board. Smaller, less prestigious, more impact. The bridge was rebuilt. Not just repaired. Rebuilt. New surface standards, new monitoring protocols, independent audits, public access to maintenance data. On the day it reopened, there were no speeches, no cameras, just traffic flowing again under a pale winter sky. I stood on the sidewalk and watched cars cross safely, tires gripping where they should. No sliding, no hesitation. A woman walked past me with a child bundled in a puffy coat. The child pointed toward the road and asked something I could not hear. The woman laughed and replied, her voice warm, unafraid. It felt like enough. My phone buzzed once. A message from Sienna. I started my volunteer hours today. It was awkward. It was honest. Thank you for not letting me stay small. I typed back. Thank you for choosing truth when it hurt. A moment passed. Then another message arrived. I still miss him sometimes, but I do not miss who I was with him. I read that twice before responding. That is how you know you are healing. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and looked out at the bridge again. The city did not know my name. It did not know Sienna's story. It did not know the deals made behind closed doors, the files shared quietly, the choices that shifted outcomes inch by inch instead of all at once. And that was fine. Because the point was never recognition. The point was that fewer people would die because data would no longer be quietly adjusted. The point was that someone inside a system would hesitate before making the next compromise, remembering that one person once refused to look away. The truth did not arrive like a storm. It arrived like maintenance, slow, uncelebrated, essential. And standing there, hands in my coat pockets, breath fogging lightly in the winter air, I understood something I had not at the beginning. Justice is not the moment the villain falls. Justice is the long, quiet work of making sure the same harm cannot happen again. It costs relationships. It costs certainty. It costs comfort. Sometimes it even costs love, but it saves lives. And for me, for the first time since the night the bus went over the edge, that felt like solid ground.